welcome everybody to our next edition of the Kentucky Pharmacist Podcast. We are joined this week by two fine folks from APCI, Bill Eley and Greg Reybold. I'll turn it over to you guys if you want to give us a quick introduction about yourself and APCI. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll start, Ben. I'm Bill Eley. I'm Director of Legislative Affairs for APCI. I just started my 19th year with APCI. That just means I'm old. That's about all that is. And I was previously the Executive Director of the Alabama Pharmacy Association. Been working very hard for independent pharmacy for a long time. We just finished our very, very well attended and successful convention in Nashville last weekend. And as Tim was our boss, the CEO, was trying to gather up all the years that everybody's been doing their job, whether it's with APCI or somebody else, but governmental affairs is my claim to fame, and it's scary to think that I've been doing this since I was 23 years old, and that's, oh boy, that's a long time. But looking forward to giving y'all some information about what's going on, at the state, federal level, and look forward to that. And now I'll turn it over to Greg.
Yeah. So thanks, Ben, for having us. Excited to join you. So Greg Reybold, I'm General Counsel and Vice President of Healthcare Policy with APCI, and been in that position for about 4 years now, and worked with APCI pretty closely, out of Georgia. And I was VP of Public Policy for the Georgia Pharmacy Association for a long time. And, we always tried to move the ball forward with innovative, aggressive, oftentimes kind of first in the nation type legislation. Similar to, frankly, I think you all have a track record of that, and Ben specifically. But one of the things that I found in working with APCI is, when you're pushing forward new legislation, new ideas, aggressive ideas, so often folks put walls up, right? It's easy to have the status quo. It's easy to want to kind of take baby steps. But APCI was always an organization that said, "Hey, we're in. We back it. Let's go," right? And so always enjoyed working with them on sort of pushing forward aggressive, innovative PBM legislation at the state level in Georgia, and have enjoyed, doing that now, not just, across multiple states, but at the federal level as well.
Yeah, I agree. And, we're obviously very thankful for our partnership with APCI, and I think you all support several state pharmacy associations, and really couldn't do what we do on a daily basis without you all and your team. And Greg, you've been such a tremendous resource at both the state and even at the federal level for us. So I just want to acknowledge that, and you do that on behalf of your members, right? I mean, it's that
Yes,
you all
sir.
see value in the work that's being done by state pharmacy associations, and obviously we're proud to be a part of that. Bill, if you want to maybe touch on what are some of the unique things that APCI's been working on for your members, and what are you hearing from your all's members in the world of pharmacy today?
Yeah, we are really engaging our members to get, as you well know, to get involved in the political process one way or another, because Greg and I only vote for one person in the state Senate, the state House, and one member of Congress and 2 U.S. senators. So I mean, we go up there a lot and go to DC and go to a lot of the state capitals and help out when we can. They like to call me the hand grenade in the office, because like I've told you and told state associations, if y'all need for us to throw a hand grenade into the state capitol and get everybody going one way, and then y'all go around the end run and get things done, we are doing that. But it's our members in each state that allow us the resources to help states. So I appreciate all the APCI members in Kentucky, and wish we had a lot more, and we'll work on that. But yeah, we are very active at the state association level, not necessarily at all state association levels, because some states, we're in 32 states. Of course, we have one member in Idaho, and we were fighting over who was going to go up and visit our new member in Idaho, but he's like 20 miles from the Canadian border, so nobody wanted to go right now. So we backed off of that. But we are very heavily involved in particularly the southeast United States. I know Mississippi is working on a bill that really doesn't have to do with reimbursement. But again, here comes the business community saying anything you do to a PBM is going to cause healthcare costs to go up. Well, if it has nothing to do with reimbursement, that's a bunch of hogwash. And you know, we try to address those issues with basically data. I know Greg will talk some about, you know, we have data now. We used to go up 10 or 15 years ago with just anecdotal type information, but we have the actual data to show people now. And what we like to do is get our members, our pharmacists that particularly that know small businesses, a chance if they could go in and like ask for their claims data, because we've got a whole department that can run numbers. We have 3-axis we have access to that can do reports and alike to help win the business community over. We're some folks do understand it. You know, my old saying is healthcare PBMs are supposed to save money in prescription for help for businesses, but the past 15 years healthcare and prescription costs have gone up along with the PBM's profit. So there's a disconnect there. You know, the top 3 PBMs are, I think the last list I saw was 3, 5, and 12 on Fortune's 500 list. And I didn't see any independent pharmacies on that list. So it's very vital that our members engage. Don't just call when the house is on fire. I mean, just develop that relationship with your state legislators and your federal guys. So, you know, you become the expert and they call you when they have a question, or they call Ben. That's the main thing is getting involved and getting engaged in the process.
Absolutely. And I will say for the record, we're not part of any hand grenades at the Capitol. Okay, we don't throw those in Kentucky. We're not going to do that. All right, no. I think that's such a valid point. You know, I was texting back and forth this morning with Senator Wise, Leader Wise in Kentucky, and all of, you know, he will tell folks when we meet with him, you know, his willingness to help understand the pharmacy world. It came directly from meeting with a constituent when he was campaigning initially to run for the Kentucky State Senate, and he's become a real leader in the policymaking world for pharmacy, specifically on PBM reform bills. He's carried some pretty tough bills in Kentucky, but it all started with just an interaction with a constituent. So, you know, as great as you and Greg may be, Bill, we got to have folks engaged at the local level to get things done. So, real quick, one thought came up. You all have how many stores now across the country in those 32 states?
Around 1,600 members. Okay. You know, our members own us, and they tell us what to do. So
that's good. Mine too. Yeah. And you all are y'all the biggest buying group for McKesson in the independent pharmacy world, or no?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, gotcha.
We're the most compliant. I'll say that is good. What I hear. Is what
I didn't know after the recent merger with APCI where that left the group. So great. Well, Greg, if we can maybe kick it over to you. And talk a little bit about kind of the PBM reform landscape and the states that you all are currently engaged in. And I think the big question we're hearing from our folks is, you know, what can we expect at the federal level in this year, this Congress, in the form of PBM reform? And I know you're up there a lot, and definitely appreciate your service to the profession in that regard. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would say at the state level, right, things are hot right now. Obviously, we're in the throes of several legislative sessions. across the country, and PBM reform, remains a big issue. Last year, across the country, it was really a tough year. And I always say sort of a, rising tide lifts all ships, right? I'd say Kentucky probably had the biggest year last year, right? And not even probably. Kentucky did have the biggest year last year. Everywhere that has moved towards sort of reimbursement, increasing transparency, index-based, reimbursement-based legislation, last year hit a brick wall in different ways, right? Sometimes in the General Assembly, sometimes in the veto process. You all were able to really navigate that, and take whatever arrows were being shot the legislative way, and come out with a win. And I think a lot of states are trying to build on the work that Kentucky did in that regard in different ways, right? There's some significant legislation. I mean, really all over, right? I mean, you're seeing some out in the Midwest, in the Wisconsin, Minnesota area. Texas will have several bills. Mississippi, we've been working hard in Alabama on legislation. Georgia has been advancing a NADAC Plus bill for state health benefit plan and university system there. So, a lot of positive steps forward. We're just going to have to see where it ends across the states. But a lot of it is building off of, I think, the good work that you all did in Kentucky at the state level, and just trying to kind of keep that ball moving in the right direction. PBMs are getting more and more sophisticated. And, what I would say, Rutledge v. PCMA was always interesting, right? It was a massive win for pharmacy and for state legislation and enforcement in certain respects. On the other hand, it sort of gave the PBMs a tool to go scare employers, with sort of these broad red herring arguments that premiums will rise and skies will fall. And PBMs have not been ineffective at sort of getting employer groups to advocate most of the time against their own interests. They just don't know it, right? So there's combating a lot of that as well. So the state remains a hotbed for PBM reform. I think even as we see these legislative sessions closing, what we're gonna find, and something I'd certainly like to focus on, is enforcement. Right across the country now, there are some really, really strong PBM laws on the books everywhere, and there's varying degrees, but everywhere enforcement remains challenging for different reasons, right? And so I think as much time and attention as effort that we spend on passing legislation, I personally would like to myself be spending more time working on the enforcement side at the state level as well. There's no finish lines, right? We're not passing these laws and the PBMs are just adhering and being good actors here, right? They are using every trick in the book to get around these very good laws. So I think there's work to do there. Federal level, listen, I think in many ways, obviously, Fed follows the states that are the leaders, and certainly Kentucky being one of them. What the federal landscape is looking at, from my perspective right now, is it seems as though leadership very much wants to see that year-end package, that sort of got stripped at the 11th hour. I think that's the starting point, right? And I think there seems to be a consensus amongst a lot of leaders in the House and the Senate that they want to see that advanced first before anything else. And so what does that look like? That's a lot of lower cost, more transparency from last year. That legislation that the House passed, which has Buddy Carter's Medicaid managed care reform in it, some significant transparency, some NADAC reporting, and then, some elements of work that's been done in the Senate as well, delinking things more focused in Medicare, as well as a little sprinkling of commercial market. But in terms of true reimbursement reform, that package really is, other than Medicaid managed care in states that have Medicaid managed care and have not done Medicaid managed care reform, there's not a whole lot of reimbursement reform in that legislation, right? You've got the Medicaid managed care reform. There's a little bit of reasonable and relevant contract provisions that CMS is supposed to sort of opine on in that package as well. I don't place great faith in CMS really taking any action that's going to protect independent pharmacy. I think we're seeing that with Inflation Reduction Act right now. I think we also see that with the way they've promulgated DIR regulations in the past, the way they've interpreted any willing provider. So I don't place a ton there, but federally, that's what we're looking at. Right now, we're looking at that year-end package, and we're working hard to make sure that, Pharmacists Fight Back Act remains on the table. And everybody knows that until you pass legislation that keeps independent pharmacies open, it's not comprehensive PBM reform, right? There will be work. If that package passes, there will be massive work to do. and we want to see federal legislation that looks very much like the state legislation that Kentucky's passed, right, and other states. And we think pharmacists fight back, or elements of pharmacists fight back is really the way to do that in terms of comprehensive PBM reform. Takes away the ability of PBMs to set drug prices, takes away the ability of PBMs to create networks, increases transparency and treats retail pharmacies, independent pharmacies fairly.
That's all great. And there's certainly a lot going on, a lot for you to keep up with. I don't know how you do it, but I can barely keep up with one state. On the year-end package that you mentioned, there was, I guess, some hope that might be included in the package that went through earlier this year, or the CR continuing resolution. Where is that in the process? And do you think when do you see that maybe moving forward, or who knows?
Package?
Yeah, the provisions that were in the year-end package before Elon sent out a tweet and killed everything.
Yeah, I don't know, right? I think there was some optimism that maybe it would be first quarter this year, and sort of the CR budget process. We haven't seen that play out. I think it remains on the table, right? And optimistically, I do think we'll see that taken up in some way, shape, or form before year end. Again, a lot of the work that we're doing is setting the table so folks know that there's work to do beyond that package as well, particularly with Pharmacists Fight Back Act. And I'll say, I would say one of the largest champions we had of that, and one of the biggest deals, was Representative James Comer out of Kentucky, who came out as a co-sponsor of Pharmacists Fight Back Act, chairman of oversight. I'd say he probably had some of the most explosive hearings in 2024 on PBMs. And that was massive in terms of building momentum and showing that there is an appetite from leaders in U.S. Congress to truly protect independent pharmacists and aggressively rein in PBM unfair practices.
Yeah, we're always glad to work with Congressman Comer. We have a strong delegation in Kentucky, and I think we had 3 co-sponsors on that bill, if I recall. McGarvey and Rogers co-sponsored as well. Yeah. Where do you think that same legislation will be filed, and you may not be able to say, I don't know, but what direction do you see the Pharmacists Fight Back Act going this Congress?
I certainly we hope to see it reintroduced, right, in very much the same shape and form. And I'll be as open as possible here. A lot of the sort of pushback that we got last year was with the bill, is that the bill looked to sort of act in too many committees, and there's sort of too many committees of jurisdiction. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw similar legislation to Pharmacists Fight Back Act, but introduce narrower sort of acting in smaller sets of the large federal plans. And who knows, right? Potentially multiple pieces of legislation that look to do the same thing, but just act in different plans. I'm not sure, but certainly our hope is to see these policy solutions advanced aggressively at the federal level. Look, federal government is a massive payer. When you talk about Medicare Part D, when you talk about Medicaid managed care, federal employee health plan, and then of course TRICARE. So often what we see is Medicare Part D and Medicaid really getting the bulk of the attention, but federal employee health plan, largest self-funded employer in the nation, right? Yeah. TRICARE, there's so much work that needs to be done in TRICARE. I don't know, we need an hour episode just to talk about TRICARE, right? I mean, the PBM administering that plan seems to rule the roost there, and sort of has this incestuous relationship with the Department of Defense. So there's a lot of work to do in all these federal plans, and our goal is to make sure that fight's being fought everywhere that it can, and that means not just one federal plan, but all federal plans.
Yeah, and it's tough, right, to prioritize one, and that's where, man, I haven't seen the pharmacy community unite and be so excited about a single piece of legislation that was 9096. I mean, it was people really, and I think that speaks to what the pharmacy community wants, right? I mean, and talking with other national organizations, like that's what will help people. That's what the fix is, or at least that's what our members feel that the fix will be, and then we certainly agree with them on that. So I think looking forward to hearing more about that as this Congress continues. And again, appreciate your work on that, because I know you were a big part of getting that filed and working that legislation. So,
well, let me say, and we were just talking about this at convention in front of all our members, but I wish that everybody got it right. But what I would say is the states that win, and I always say this, winning begets winning, right? The states that aren't afraid to fight the big fights and find a way to win those fights, those are the states that really enthusiastically backed Pharmacists Fight Back Act in 1996, right? Not all organizations did. It's a big, aggressive fight. There's no doubt about it. But I can tell you, it meant the world that you all did, and you were up there for one of the press conferences, which was just awesome, right? To have leaders from the states that get it, that have fought the fights in the trenches, and come out and won those fights. To have sort of that backing and those minds and that kind of support, that's what's going to get it done at the federal level.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough, and understanding there's a huge dynamic there with various pharmacy organizations in DC, and certainly appreciate the work that they do. But you know as well as I do, we've got to get our folks engaged on whatever issue it is, and they got to feel like it's helping them. And I think, at least for our members, what we heard in Kentucky is that's what we want. That will help us go, and we were glad to have the opportunity to come to DC and speak in favor of that. So that was also, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, that was what really encouraged us is when Greg was took him. It's not like at the state level. It took us like a year and a half to draft that bill to get it through everything. But people really got excited because they could see something that was going to mean something to them. Keep doors open, not just moving the chairs around on the Titanic. So it was a big boost, and we thank Greg and Congressman Auchincloss and a lot of folks that took up and Congresswoman Harshbarger that took up the flag on that to get that introduced. And well, we got in what in 2 months got 55 or so co-sponsors from split right down the middle, Democrats and Republicans. So it was a big effort. So we appreciate everybody that helped, especially you, Ben, because I know that you did something. A couple other states did us a little separate little blast email out to their members and whatnot. So we'll really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes left here. We try to keep our podcast around 20 to 30 minutes. So I guess just want to again acknowledge the support that you all provide. And Bill, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add from APCI standpoint, and especially with the recent merger with APSC. I guess that's what, if I'm using that term incorrectly, let me know. But be remiss to not mention Kathy Hanna and all the great work she does for us here in Kentucky.
Kathy is amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, she is.
Great.
She really is. I want to thank you, Ben, for your leadership in Kentucky, because you're one of the best there is in the country, because we deal with a lot of different state associations, and we never mind helping the Kentucky Pharmacists Association any way we can. Like I said, if it's supporting something or funds or lobbing grenades into Frank, just whatever we need to do to help you.
Which we're not doing, as Ben said.
Well, which we're not doing. Yeah, correct.
Not doing that.
And that's why they hired Greg 3 or 4 years ago to keep me in line, because I kind of go off on track sometimes. But yeah, the work that you do up there is just fantastic. Your association is great. Love all the folks there, and anything we can do to help you get your goal, meet your goals, and whatever it takes to do that. So, but we are fighting in a lot of states. Texas, Arkansas's one. That's doing a lot of nice things, and I think Greg's headed out there sometime this week, maybe. And Tennessee's trying to follow them up. Georgia's doing some good things. Florida's in the midst of doing a lot of different things, so we're down there helping them too. But
So
we even
what I'm
help.
hearing is that if the more active you are in PBM reform, the better your basketball team is going to be. That all
Yeah,
of
that's
those
right.
folks
That's
had
right.
a good basketball team this year. So
That's right. That's
maybe that's
right.
what we need to do to encourage other states.
That's right. That's right.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Greg, anything else to add as we wrap up?
No, listen, again, I appreciate you having us on. I think it's an exciting time. Looking forward to continue to work with you all at the state and federal level. And, there's just exciting big fights to be had. So, we just want to keep the members and keep the independent pharmacists engaged. And, I feel like in certain ways, from a policy perspective, we have the winds at our back. We just got to keep the momentum going, and I think good things are going to come.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys joining us today, and I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future to talk about future successes. So appreciate you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.